Hello everyone, welcome. Shout out to Mill. Shout out to Taraya. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Miller. Shout out to Stella. Shout out to Somi. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Mia. Hi everyone, welcome. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Shout out to Abby. Shout out to Sandish. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Jenna. Happy birthday. Shout out to Rose. Shout out to Hala. Happy birthday, Hala. Shout out to Ariella. Shout out to, write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Shout out to Ryan. Shout out to Dario. Or Dariel. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Yunche. Shout out to Kamaya. Or Kamiya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Jolie. Shout out to JD. Shout out to Madison. Shout out to Camila. Shout out to Carmen. Shout out to Leilani. Shout out to Arlith. Shout out to Catherine. Shout out to Yoonchip. Shout out to Murphy. Shout out to Pauline. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Jesus. Shout out to Madeline. Shout out to Alanis. Shout out to Annie. Shout out to Ashley. Shout out to Cosette. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Neymar. Shout out to Carolina. Shout out to Donna. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Janet. Shout out to Norin. Shout out to Grace. Shout out to Juno. Shout out to Adeline. Shout out to Della. Shout out to Raina. Shout out to Lexi and Justice. Shout out to Lexi. Shout out to Justice. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Haven. Shout out to Poppy. Shout out to Maria. Shout out to Manon. Shout out to Scotland. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Lonnie. Shout out to Regina. Shout out to Jasmine. Shout out to Sophia. Shout out to Alec. Shout out to Bianca. Shout out to Jamila. Shout out to Charlie. Shout out to Ray. Shout out to Ellie. No, what was it? Elise. Shout out to Ray Ray. Shout out to Ronaldi. Shout out to Nikki. Shout out to Hadassah. Shout out to Carolina. Shout out to Giselle. Shout out to, is it Akbarjan? Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Moises. Shout out to Kiana. Shout out to Adeline. Wait, did I? Oh no. Adeline with the E, A-D-E. Shout out to Adeline. Shout out to Cruz. Shout out to Ashley. Shout out to Matthew. Shout out to Donica. Shout out to Ivana. Shout out to Dwayne. Shout out to Eric. Shout out to Mary. Shout out to Lucia. Shout out to Addie. Congratulations, Addie, for your tooth. Shout out to Bradley. After I write the names, I just leave it here. I leave it on my desk, and then I leave it here so I can do the next live stream. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Lacey. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Rosie. Shout out to Kendra. Shout out to Allie. I live stream every day around the same time as this. So same time as right now, every day. Shout out to Anaya. Shout out to Gabriella. Shout out to Rocky. Shout out to Alexis. Shout out to Keegan. You're welcome, Hazel. Shout out to Janaya. You're welcome. Shout out to Anna. Anna, I'm gonna put you over here because there's space. Shout out to, thank you for subscribing, Janaya. Shout out to Camila. Shout out to Kanay, or Kanai. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Khadijah. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Thank you, Janaya, for subscribing. I wrote your name down right here. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Also, thank you for your patience. I know I don't write as fast as I wish I could. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Hazel. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Estrella. Shout out to Ivana. Shout out to Elena. Shout out to Sandra. Shout out to Kiki. Shout out to Riley. Shout out to Millie. Shout out to Ashlyn. Shout out to Menaz. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Cheyenne. Shout out to Alexis. Shout out to Gerson or Jerson. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to May or Mai. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Carla. Shout out to Junhee. Shout out to Rokia. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Hawa. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Genesis. Shout out to Lean. Shout out to Ariana. Shout out to Amir. Can you write your name again? Raya? I don't know what, shout out to Messiah. Shout out to Haley. Shout out to Melissa. Shout out to Hala. Thank you for writing your name again. Shout out to Gerson, I got you. Right here. Shout out to Yo-Yo. Excuse me. Shout out to Shayna. Shout out to David. Shout out to Justina. Shout out to Manu. Shout out to Camila. Shout out to Charlotte. Shout out to Mila. Shout out to Ness. Shout out to Eddie. Shout out to Tafiq. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Lyndon. Shout out to Delina. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Ella. Shout out to Olivia. Shout out to Emiliana. Shout out to Almira. Shout out to Kimber. Shout out to Maddie. Shout out to Blakey. Shout out to Melissa. Shout out to Elagosa. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Kimberly. Shout out to Natalie. Shout out to Declan. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Kyla. Shout out to Charlotte. Shout out to Alex. Shout out to Jessica. Shout out to Gavin. Shout out to Saul. Shout out to Eris. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Bethany. Shout out to Jessica. Oh, I got Jessica. Shout out to Bryn. Shout out to Robin. Shout out to Cameron. Shout out to Kiki. Shout out to Lexi. Shout out to Benjamin. Shout out to Hazel. Excuse me. Shout out to Sierra or Kiara. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to GC or Jessie. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Elsie. Shout out to Lala. Shout out to Emery. Shout out to Noreen. Shout out to Thea. Shout out to Audrey. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to write your name. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to Samantha. Shout out to Lana. Shout out to Abigail. Shout out to Gabby. Shout out to Glenda. Shout out to Leah. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Noah. Shout out to Soraya. Shout out to Karen. Shout out to Sheena. Shout out to Juliana. Shout out to Junik. Shout out to Isabella. Shout out to Melissa. Shout out to Madison. Shout out to Coco. Shout out to Kayla. Shout out to Maeve. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Tabitha. Excuse me. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Damelia. want me to shout you out? Shout out to Ayan. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Emily. Shout out to Kate. Shout out to Zara. Shout out to Ayana. Shout out to Jevon. Or Jevin. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Celine. Shout out to Grace. Shout out to Angelin. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Livia. Shout out to Elijah. Shout out to Mimi. Shout out to Kai. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Mabel. Shout out to Siani or Sayani. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Callie. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Sanem. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Xavier. Shout out to Reina. Shout out to Bella. Shout out to Tooth. Shout out to Sophia. Shout out to Maribel. Shout out to Belle. Shout out to Maverick. Thank you everyone for your patience. Shout out to Rachel. Shout out to Cass. Shout out to Mama. Shout out to Sarah. Is it Sarah with a Y at the end? Shout out to Nadia. Shout out to Chandler. Shout out to Victoria. Shout out to Safet. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Nicole. Shout out to Kyla. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Sophie. Shout out to Cam. Emma. Shout out to Roman. Shout out to Yari. Shout out to Willow. Shout out to Valentina. Shout out to Ivy. Shout out to Almira. Shout out to Star. Shout out to Wilkinson. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Juliana. Shout out to Ashlyn. Shout out to Valerie. Shout out to Nimrat. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Chaz. Shout out to Anaya. Shout out to Naimia. Nema. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Emmanuel. Oops. Shout out to Refa. Or Rifa. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Anna. Shout out to Isabel. Shout out to More. Shout out to Celeste. Shout out to Albright. Shout out to Aaliyah. Shout out to Mimi. Shout out to Winnie. Shout out to Maisie. Shout out to Riley. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Octavia. Shout out to Christopher. Thank you for your patience. Shout out to Aiden. Shout out to Jamil. Shout out to Brooklyn. Shout out to Malik. Shout out to Amanda. Shout out to Shahir. I'm so sorry about the noise. Oh my goodness. Shout out to Darlene. Shout out to Stephanie. I did do Christopher. Christopher's right here. Shout out to Julie. Shout out to Kubra. Shout out to Anna. Shout out to Amalia. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Sasha. Shout out to Lisa. Shout out to Danny. Bye, Angelin. Thank you for stopping by. Shout out to Kaisley. Thank you, Christopher, for subscribing. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to Lindsay. Shout out to Jackson. Shout out to Hamish. Or Hamish. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Kamoya. Shout out to Leo. Shout out to Nani. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the live stream. I also post other content. I hope you can check it out as well and support my channel. I would truly appreciate it. Also, thank you for taking the time to write your name. And thank you for your patience. Shout out to Perla. Shout out to Owen. Shout out to Ross. Shout out to Laura. Shout out to Kevin. Shout out to Grayson. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Roman. Shout out to Manon. Shout out to Ruby. Shout out to Tamara. Shout out to Jisoo. Shout out to Annie. Shout out to Jeffrey. Shout out to Marlon. Shout out to Isabella. Shout out to Valerie. Shout out to Sydney. Shout out to Will. Shout out to Helen. Shout out to Monica. Shout out to Meredith. Shout out to Scotland. Shout out to Taylin. Shout out to Meme Sung. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Shirley. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Johnson. Shout out to Raina. Shout out to Amaya. Shout out to Izzy. Shout out to Sky. Shout out to Cameron. Shout out to Kai. Shout out to Soraya. Shout out to Callie. Shout out to Ryan. Shout out to Gia. Shout out to Bryn. Shout out to Nicole. Shout out to Ali. Shout out to, was it Soon Ming? Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Gabby. Shout out to Vivian. Shout out to Mima. Shout out to Kellen. Shout out to Yoldine. Shout out to Kuna. Shout out to Ariel. Or Ariel, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Savannah. Shout out to Waldo. Shout out to Ariel, I got you. Shout out to, is it Lily Rosie? Illy Rosie. Illy Rosie. Rosie. Shout out to Leo. Shout out to Autumn. Shout out to Carter. Shout out to Poppy. Shout out to Safi. Shout out to Kimani. Shout out to Brielle. Shout out to Rose. Shout out to Aniston. Shout out to Mila. Shout out to Bo. Shout out to Maverick. Shout out to London. Shout out to Kennedy. Shout out to Ariel. Shout out to Aaliyah. Shout out to Juliana. Shout out to Brinley. Shout out to Danny. Shout out to Caroline. Shout out to Janaya. Shout out to Tony. Shout out to Bree. Shout out to Sherry. Leave a like if you're enjoying the live stream. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Jordan. Shout out to Allison. Shout out to Kimberly. Shout out to Aisha. Shout out to Sherry. Shout out to Stella. Shout out to Maka. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Maverick. Shout out to Akalia. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Ruby. Shout out to Preston. Shout out to Sherry. Oh, Sherry, I got you. Elena, I got you. Lyndon, I got you. Shout out to Lilia. Shout out to Jacob. Shout out to Leol. Shout out to Jane. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Lena. Shout out to Dylan. Shout out to Mark. Shout out to Malik. Shout out to Alina. Shout out to Rima. Shout out to Milena. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. Thank you so much for being here. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the shout outs. Thank you for taking the time to write your name. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to Amber. Shout out to Lauren. Shout out to Jamar. Shout out to Rosie. Shout out to Soraya. Shout out to Legacy. Shout out to Lucia. Shout out to BP. Shout out to Lena. Shout out to Hanny. Shout out to Stella. Shout out to Aiden. Shout out to Jisha, or Jasha. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Alina. Shout out to Ariana. Shout out to Sammy. Shout out to Mackenzie. Shout out to Paisley. Shout out to Abdullah. Shout out to Sophia. Sammy, I got you. Shout out to Farah. Shout out to Brianna. Shout out to Annalise. Shout out to Madeline. Oh no, Malin, sorry, I read it wrong. Malin. Shout out to Daniela. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Arshvina. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Samira. Shout out to Dylan. Shout out to MJ. Shout out to Chelsea. Shout out to Jivitesh. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Abby. Shout out to Fur. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Luna. Shout out to Gigi. Shout out to Marie. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Haley. Shout out to Jacob. Shout out to Carissa. Shout out to Maddie. Shout out to Alana. Shout out to Ari Bear. Shout out to Shirley. Shout out to Carissa. Shout out to May, or Mai, sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Adonai. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Elsie. Oops. Let me write your name again. I kind of messed up. Elsie. Shout out to Mila. Shout out to Sasha. Shout out to Juliana. Shout out to Carissa. Shout out to Scarlett. Shout out to Charlie. Give me 30 seconds, I'll be right back.